Oh, hey everyone. We're just sitting here. I'm smiling now. We're sitting here just talking with a friend of ours, Zach Haas, who's got some new EHD product out. My buddy Joel and George here. And like I said, I'm smiling now. But once we get into the EHD stuff, I'll probably be crying by the end of it.
Yeah.
But because we've done an episode before on EHD with feed and all the stuff that we're doing, but it obviously, nothing that you can do is enough. We're still losing deer, and especially this last year, how much of Iowa, especially that western side, just got devastated. And the year before was North Dakota, and it just seems like it's getting to be more and more prevalent. So it seemed like for years, all you ever heard about was CWD, and to me, like I said it before, not that you shouldn't look into it, but to me, it's a waste of time and money because it's not affecting anything. I think most deer,
they can live 6-7 years.
or even longer. Who knows? All these deer are dying. Yeah. They test them. Okay, well they died of lead poisoning, not from CWD. So they're still breeding and all that kind of stuff. Where EHD is dead right now. And I think that when I look at CWD, to me it just seems like, what are you doing? It's been 20 years since we're doing this stuff, and you can't tell me one more thing about it today than you could in 2002 when you first started, and just going and taking these counties and shooting all the deer out of it, and it's just like, what sense does that make?
Yeah, there's been no progress on it.
None.
Yeah, and then no feeding in places. It's like, what would that be? That's the one thing that we can do is try to keep them healthier in the off season and with protein and different things. You try to keep your deer as healthy as possible, and then now you take that away in states, and to me it's like, okay, we don't want to congregate deer in one area. It's like, well, I can look at my backyard and I can see 45 licking branches on there, and I can sit and watch them all night. Every one of those deer will hit that same exact branch and sit out there and lick each other for an hour each night. They all go, it's like, what are you thinking? You guys, they don't know. You got to take your head out of a book and go out and look outside once. And it's like, that feeding stuff is not, is not causing the problem for it or spreading it any more than the licking branches.
100%.
Right, or low clover plot or anything that they're all eating out of. It's just
for sure.
the same thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just think anytime that you got something that you can't tell me a single thing in 20 years, either you don't care, it's not real, or there's no way of solving it. So let's forget about that. I think people start spending their money on EHD because that's something that's affecting hunters and affecting everybody now. And I think that now that it's gotten so bad everywhere, where it used to be just something you just saw in the Milk River or something out in Montana and the Yellowstone or something like that, and it was like, well, that happens out there every few years, but doesn't bother anybody else. So it wasn't really on anybody's radar.
Yep.
But now it's like from Minnesota, from this year, talking about up in Alberta, like places where we mule deer hunt. It hasn't been bad where we hunt yet, but a friend of mine from back who just called and said here all the mule deer are dying from EHD up in the area that he was going to be hunting, and a lot of the deer are gone, and he's worried about that. And that's places you never heard stuff like that. Now in Minnesota and down to Alabama and all this, the whole states. I think it's worth talking about again, because I really think that it's not like CWD where they're talking about, okay, they just don't have any way of curing it. And I don't think it's a problem anyway, because obviously if you're just testing deer that people shot and you're finding however many a year in a county, 5, 6, whatever, it's like how many? I've never had one tested. I don't know anybody that's had one tested. So it's like obviously thousands of them have been eaten, and it's not transferable.
Right.
So
you never get sick from it.
Yeah, nobody's sick from it.
Consumer.
It might take just like, I could look at it kind of like AIDS or something like that. When you had HIV, it was people had HIV, but it didn't bother them until it kicked into the actual AIDS form. And I just think deer, what's the average age of a deer? Like a buck is like, for most places, probably 3 years old.
Yeah, 100%. Sure.
And maybe in Iowa, some that does a lot of good management, maybe 4. But that, I don't think they live long enough for it to even affect them. That's probably why even cancers and stuff like that.
I agree.
They probably don't see a lot of deer dying from it. They just don't live long enough for those things to take effect.
Yeah.
On them, but
and there's just so many theories when it comes to EHD. Everybody's got, I know, but nobody knows.
Yeah, but I think that's something that I think could be solved. I think if they took money from CWD and said, hey, let's do this, and you can get right to the root cause of it, as well as that, all we can do now is things on our own farms, and certainly can help, but that doesn't mean if your neighbors aren't doing it, I mean, your deer.
But is it cost effective for everybody? That's the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, state land, you think the state's going to say, okay, we're going to go in, we're going to treat all our water sources, we're going to do this.
And I'm going to tell you no.
But
that's a big no.
It could get to the point where we're taking resources. Now you're losing non-resident hunters coming into the state because you don't have any.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what the dollar
amount.
amount is they're spent on CWD, but I'm just saying if they put that to EHD, we could definitely make progress on it. Where on CWD, it's been 20-something years they've been doing it. They can't tell me a single damn thing that they couldn't have 20-something years ago. So to me,
absolutely,
something is not right here. It's just a money grab at this point because you're not doing anything. And you said you ask, "What are you doing anything to cure this?" No, we're just testing.
Yeah, and to me, it's similar to like even like when I worked in aquatics, and we'd find a new invasive species that came in. They would pump a bunch of money in, and we get a new product out, cure it like that. It was no time, but it was because there was actually effort put into the solution rather than just figuring out the problem and going further detail about the problem.
Right.
Let's get into the solutions.
Right. And it sounds like the prion thing or whatever is different. I mean, that's not something you can just cure, but like I said, it's if it's not affecting deer numbers, not affecting people who eat it, consume it, it's not affecting anything, okay. All right, you can't do anything, but EHD you can. Oh, yeah. I mean, you could get rid of that or help a ton.
And like you said, like EHD, you're talking herds that can be wiped out. I mean, that one year I remember in 2012, I hunted in Missouri and 80% of the herd was gone. I mean, just like that.
Western Iowa right now, I mean, they're going to close hunting in 2 or 3 counties.
Several counties.
Really?
They're not going to.
No hunting next year.
Any tags.
I mean, Skip was out there. He said there was like 4 deer in this 100 square mile area. 4 left. And that was flying drones and helicopters. Everything's dead out there.
Yeah. And then now you're talking the rebuild, like we talked about this previously, especially when you're trying to hunt, let's say, mature deer. All right, it takes that 4 or 5 years to get a mature buck. All right, let's say the herd gets wiped out when he's at 3, and now you're back to that cycle again.
Yeah,
back to the cycle again. And before you know it, now you're even everyone's class of, or in Iowa, right? So everyone's going for that giant deer. Well, suddenly it goes into like Wisconsin, where suddenly it's like the 130 is the trophy.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can't back it. You can't.
No,
you can't
you lose
back
those
down
age
your.
classes.
Yep. Yep.
And that's what happens though, because people like for me, I don't feel like I have to shoot a deer.
Yep.
I mean, even though we have a TV show, and I still don't feel like I'll do something else.
Yep.
I'll go other states. I'll do something else. But like I said, if your top end is gone, you can't say, well, my biggest one now might still be a 170, but he's a 3-year-old. I'm gonna shoot that's my biggest one, and then you just keep going backward.
Yep.
Which it's a good point about management is, people don't realize how few deer it takes to affect your whole herd. I mean, huge farm here is 600-800 acres. In Iowa, most people's you're talking 100.
Right.
Those deer you're gonna be sharing those deer with 20 other hunters. So I mean,
absolutely.
the odds of even for us to like last year, I let 5 of my biggest deer go. I didn't even want to shoot any of them, and 3 of them made it. 2 of them dead. One I don't know where it went. One of them we found dead. And the other ones I haven't seen for sure yet, even now, so you don't know because so many of our deer are dying after they shed, too. Yeah. Way to go, George.
That's my wife.
There's a little button on the side that you can put on there for silence.
I have it actually turned off that way.
So, but anyway, just to try to get your age structure here is just, it's hard enough as it is, and
honestly, it's even bringing that up, and that's probably been my niche as an aquatic biologist, but I've always been able to correlate wildlife management with fisheries management. So it's no different when a lake is overstunted, you don't have the age structure, you're overpopulated by 5-inch bluegill, you got to take them all out to get the better bluegills introduced, and then we'd also restock with different genetics. It's honestly, they go hand in hand.
For sure.
So I always treated it the same way, because even take a big fish, right? When he's older, he puts all his energy to his body, just like a whitetail does. So you correlate the two together. So to me, that's how my brain has always worked. But yeah, it's all about age structure. If you don't have it there, it's a failed ecosystem.
Right, and I suppose that's one thing we should just, we should have done right at the very beginning. But Zach is teamed up with some of your friends, and you came up with a new product, EHD-Fense.
Yep. And
so I saw that, and right away people had sent me some emails and texts about it. So I called you guys right away to say, hey, let's talk about this, because it's not just something that I'm interested in. Just like we've been saying, how many people are affected by it. I think it's something that people need to hear about. And
Right, and I think the most important thing coming from Zach is, okay, let's get to the root cause. Where do they come from? Are they hatching in the mud? Are they born with the EHD virus, which most likely not?
Yeah, I'm sure it's just like ticks with Lyme disease.
It's just like ticks with Lyme disease. Yeah. So everyone just thinks that it's mud to insect, but there's a full life cycle. There's egg, larva, pupa, adult. So when they're laid in mud. And that's, so everyone's correct there where the mud is. Where
Near water.
They're laid.
Obviously near moist area.
But also, it's as long as there's organic, rich material present. So it can be a tire that's in your fence line. It could be an old rotted tree hole. It could be anywhere there's organic, rich matter with moisture and water nearby. So, it's the same as mosquitoes, or same exact way. Or a puddle that's in the middle of your road that you never repaired because, why deal with it? It could have been laid there. So then as the egg develops, it turns into the larva. And then when it goes into the pupa phase, it'll actually leave the mud and it's starting to free swim and before it becomes an adult and flies out.
Okay, so but now if there's like a mud hole or something, they may lay the eggs in it, but if that all dries up, they're not gonna survive.
Correct.
Will they move or will they actually die? I mean,
So
does it
they'll
generally
die.
matter?
They'll die because they can't. Yeah, they won't be able to. Grow legs and walk across, right? But
Okay.
with that said, like that female though, that's infected with the EHD virus. All right, that mud hole dries up, so she goes to the other water source. And if
Okay.
she already has it, she's gonna bite the next buck, lay her eggs around that one, and they'll just keep on moving.
Okay, so what's their lifespan? I mean, do they die over time? What kills them?
What truly kills the midge is frost. And it's like when you bring up Alberta and all these things. Well, think about how our climate's been changing, and like we're not getting the snows we got. We got getting
Okay,
cold.
here we go. Climate change.
Yeah, right. I hate to even bring it up, right? But with that said, like Wisconsin, like where I'm from, we don't get the hard winters anymore.
Right.
And our frost is way later, our killing frost. So like, and that's one thing to point out is everyone just thinks frost is 32 degrees. No, killing frost is 28. So you got to get a true killing frost to kill. All these bugs, mosquitoes, the midges, all that stuff, and then they die off for the year. Yep. We're not seeing that killing frost as early as we have. Like we've talked, all these deer are dying in October, November.
So let's go back though to you saying, okay, so the female, she's infected. Where is she getting the virus from?
I haven't done enough research on to truly know where she gets that virus from.
I mean, we all heard the whole cow thing.
Yes, like cows have it. Yeah, they'll bite it, but now like where that cow got it, hard to say. Right, it's kind of like even like ticks. They've researched way further. Like they get it from the white-footed mouse. It's a weird ordeal with the tick cycle. They haven't really pinpointed that other than like cattle or something that way that's already carrying it. Because like a cattle, if it's in her system,
You sure he didn't create it?
might have. He might have.
I've heard that
in the same lab, right?
Yeah, because I mean, even like for ticks, I mean, I know like Thermacell had those tick tubes at one time, and you're like, oh, how's that going to work? And also it was like cotton with permethrin in it, so the mice would go in there. I mean, you'd put those tubes out immediately, like within 2 days, the cotton was gone. The mice would find it, but then they'd bring in their nest, they had permethrin, so they would kill all the ticks off them.
Sure.
So it was just kind of, at least it was a start of a way to think about a root cause of your Lyme disease. Not, it can get rid of ticks on there, but even that it's not going to transmit you're not going to be getting Lyme disease and killing them right from the mice. And that was at least, I think, forward thinking of a way to look at it. Was maybe that's where I think maybe the cure for the EHD stuff is going to come from the root cause of it, not just trying to treat your deer in your ponds and stuff like we're doing now, which is a good start. I mean, we can save a lot of our deer doing what these things.
Because like when you bring up like even the tick conversation, like so I was part of like the research and stuff that back where I went to get my undergraduate, where we had to go out and collect all the ticks on white cloths and all this, and they test them. But it's because it impacted people, so they actually cared a little, to be like, oh, this affects people.
Put the effort into it.
Right.
Let's be honest, the big government doesn't really care about our mature buck.
Right.
So that's why there haven't been any force other than just documenting the cases. They know when the original case was discovered was 1955 in New Jersey. Next case, I think, was in 1972. It was just like random, like, oh, it has this virus. It didn't affect us.
Well, now we're talking different strains,
Yep.
I mean, last year, what strain? I mean, was probably
Yes.
4?
Yeah. So like with EHD, there's 2 different technically variants of it right now. So you could treat it kind of like right where they have the different variants, but there's 2 true variants that can alter within the variant. So one is blue tongue, and the one is EHD. Those are the 8.
Okay.
Those are
So those aren't.
So they are in the same family.
they're in, same virus family, but different variants. So like blue tongue obviously is affecting more like your western states and antelope and mule deer, and there's actually been a couple cases of bighorn sheep being killed off by it. Whereas over here we're getting more of the EHD issues. Now Dakotas kind of have both the problem, but you're kind of in that mesh of between the west and Midwest.
So you often hear blue tongue and EHD.
Yep. Use them
one and the
interchangeably.
same.
Yeah.
Deer has blue tongue or has EHD. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and the
So
symptoms are
it's
the same. Everything.
But it's actually a separate disease.
Yep, and the same. The Culicodes species or genus is the same midge that carries it.
Okay.
So it's the same midge.
Yep.
So it's not like the black flies carry blue tongue and the midge
Right.
carries this.
So-
it's all with the Culicodes midge.
I guess the starting point for some people that may not know what is a midge.
So it's like an no-see-em, a gnat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real small.
Yep, real small. Like you'll see them.
That's why they call them OCMs.
Correct. It's like
really
it's like
hard to see.
a
Shit.
fruit fly, kind of
Right.
thing. So yeah, you're not really seeing them much. Not like a mosquito will or bug or ticks even.
Right.
You're not seeing them. Unless you're really looking hard. But yeah, so like a lot of people call them OCMs, but it's kind of like a small gnat.
Okay.
So let me ask you this: how many draw cycles of blood does that midge need throughout the summer? Do you know? I mean, like, is she biting every day, or is it like, okay,
Yep.
I attach myself to this buck's horns because that's the easiest place to get and closest place blood is. Boom, I
Yep.
draw. I'm good for a month or 2
Oh no,
months.
I mean it's gonna be, almost daily where she's gonna be drawing blood.
okay.
Because she needs to feed her egg supply, and especially with insects, the more they can get, it's kind of like a mosquito. Like as soon as they consume their blood, they're already putting on the eggs to lay to do the next cycle. So it's rapid. It's not like this female midge bites the 170 and she's like, all right, I'm fed and I'm good. No, she's gonna keep on.
Okay,
Does
so
she lay eggs each time? Mm-hmm. So they just bite legs.
Yep, just as
bite
many.
legs.
Yeah, especially with insects.
so
the
what
more they
about
can
humans?
reproduce.
I mean, they obviously are biting us at some point.
Yeah, because we have blood supply. Obviously, there's never been a documented case of anyone having.
Right.
EHD.
So obviously we have something in our
But you might-
genetic code that doesn't allow us to
Correct.
get it.
Correct, and not that they've ever done any research on that either. Like once again, it's kind of that been a
Nobody's been sick, so
that sweep
why?
under the rug kind of deal, But yeah, every anything that's a mammal's getting bit. It's just how it's affected. Of whitetails getting obviously affected worse. It's more ruminant species than anything that are getting affected than obviously we're not a ruminant. So, but when you start thinking like your elk and your mule deer and all that, you're starting talking about ruminant animals. Those are the ones getting affected by the EHD. Then you go southern U.S. and now we're not having the issue because they actually built immunity over time because they had it a long time before we ever had it up here. So there is very rarely can see it light at the end of the tunnel.
But you don't see it
But
in
you don't know when
Kansas.
it's
Zero.
Yeah, correct.
Never hear cases in Kansas anymore.
Other than like
They
the
have-
eastern
they,
part.
they have that come through a while ago. That you think they
Yeah.
have immunity now, right?
Yeah.
Because they had it a while ago.
And it depends, it's like you get central Kansas, there's no water.
Okay.
I mean,
That's
other than
sand.
other than big reservoirs, yeah, it's
Sand,
it's beach sand with the yucca and cactus
Yeah,
everywhere.
that's true.
Eastern Kansas gets it every year, but now we're getting more like the Missouri kind of ground, kind of similar to Iowa even.
But see, I read a thing where like if you get down to around southern Missouri, around the Cape Girardeau area
Yep.
and north, and then you get to about southern Minnesota, that's the big swath where most of it happens, right in that valley right there.
Yeah.
You get south of that, nothing. You go north, but now Lee's saying they're seeing it in Canada, so obviously
and one thing
it's not prejudiced.
I've seen some broad research on is they're saying how the midge is following the airstreams. And our airstreams are moving.
Yeah.
And
Makes sense.
now, like where I live is eastern Wisconsin. Well, I have the Great Lakes by me, so the airstreams get pushed. It pushes everything away from us. So, like I said, it's very broad research at this point. But I've seen where they're following that airstream.
because they don't necessarily fly, do they?
Yes,
They do fly.
the female, or male or female, whatever it is, the adult insect
Okay.
flies. Yep.
All right.
Yep. Through the species, I mean, it's like I said, there's even, like I said, the documentation, even with bighorn, that's very small, but pronghorn, mule deer, some elk.
But the thing is, it's hard. Like whitetail guys are
Yep.
really around their deer all the time, so it's
100%.
We notice it more.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody says, well, it only seems to be happening to our bucks. No, I think people just pay more attention to your bucks. Right. Nobody's looking for a dead doe.
We see as many, we see probably more dead does.
And there's a reason behind that. While you're not seeing as many spikes, little 8s and all that stuff, that is, think about blood supply. When that giant deer
has more blood at the horns.
I mean, the amount of blood in there, and we talked about, like, if you take a thermal drone and look at a big buck in a field, it's glowing red.
I mean, they're attracted to heat.
And so all that blood flow is down there. So the bigger the deer, the more feed supply for that midge. So she's attracted to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas little spike goes to it, there's nothing there. A doe, well, yeah, there's some blood there on her, on her head, but it's not crazy.
We have a friend of ours who manages a bunch of ground in Illinois, and he's a firm believer in getting all the vegetation away from your ponds because he feels like those midges end up on that grass. They walk through it, boom, it brushes against them. Oh man, she's in her sinuses or she's in her ears, whatever.
And I guess for me, like, I like vegetation around ponds. To a certain extent, like if you start getting like 5 foot tall reed canary grass, I'm not a fan, but you can get some low lying sedges and rushes, and to me that houses beneficial species. So predatory species of the midge. So like dragonfly will be in those plants, frogs will be in those plants.
Neat.
So you take all that vegetation, but you just took habitat away from what might be also eating on the midge.
So this I think the biggest thing that I have learned different than I had known before. See, I always heard like okay, mosquitoes lay their eggs in the water, and you can treat the water, those pumps where you can throw in there that treats that. And then I was like, midges in the mud, so there's no way you can get in the mud. But what I didn't know is that as soon as they hatch, they have to go to water from that phase, so you can still
correct. Yeah, you can still
get at that egg or at the nymph phase or whatever in the
whereas like mosquito life cycle is entirely in the water. So that's why you can use a mosquito puck and these different insecticides to kill them off. Yeah. Whereas that midge, in a way, at first she lays it in a protected area, the mud. And then as they develop and they go into that, like I said, the larva into the pupa stage, and that's where actually your predatory species will then feed on them. They don't feed on the eggs and things that way, but when they develop the larva and into the pupa, that's when like a dragonfly larva will feed on them. Because now the dragonfly larva is in the water, and now that's a food source.
Oh, okay.
So it's
interesting.
So you kind of catch them in that cycle, you cut it off, and now they never can develop into an adult.
Okay, so let's talk about your EHD-Fense.
Yeah.
So what are we doing to the water with that product?
Yeah. So it kind of goes back. I mean, I was researching and and probably never, I honestly probably would never researched it if it never had happened to me personally.
EHD. Taken out.
So like when I was a poor college kid, I graduated, used my first like paycheck to get a lease, and then they all died. I'm like, that was a good spend of money. But with that said, it happened to me. So at the time, I was a research director for a private pond and lake management company. So I was like, well, I might as well do some kind of project, right? So I started kind of diving into the rabbit hole that is EHD when no one else was. I mean, I was talking to different professors, all these different things. And, a lot of it started stemming into, and what a lot of professors, even my own professors at UW Stevens Point, were saying is the midge wants poor water quality. They want degraded water sources. They want high organic richness. They want eutrophication. So that's like eutrophication is essentially, just for simplicity, is the aging of water. So the more, like when you go up to, like, let's say you're placing in Minnesota, you get a lot of these deep lakes that are nice and clear. Those are not eutrophic. They're lagotrophic or mesotrophic.
Creeks the same way because there's running water. Yep. It's not as...
Yep, so they want those impaired water sources. Well, and then obviously and I started thinking about it, and you go, okay, well, at the time, what was our main state we were hearing the issues? Well, we were here in Iowa, right, getting smacked. Well, then I think, well, what's in almost any pasture ground of every
cattle ponds?
It's cattle ponds that you go through
this deep and
they're pooping and they're peeing, they're stirring them up. I mean, it is the worst water quality, period.
Full bacteria.
So you just pretty much said, well, here's your home, midge, start living in it. Well, then as I started researching the Culicodes midge, it doesn't fare well with competition, food chain competition. So it's a prey species of your predator beetles, your predator insects. So if those can't be present, so like your invertebrates and your beneficial amphibians and all these different things, they're going to be the first ones to leave an impaired water source. They can't deal with poor water quality. Like even when I was studying streams up by us, if there was pollution that happened in a stream, every single invertebrate was gone, dead. just wiped out. It didn't take much pollution either.
Okay.
It's just how with their membranes are for their skin and things that way, where they take it in so quickly, they're done. But you start losing them, and all you do is, and it's kind of like going back into the theory of fish. If you have, let's say, all these different all the bluegills are taking the whole thing, and they eventually just kill themselves off, but they take home everything because there's no balance in food chain. And so that's basic biology: is if there's not a food chain present, something's going to win the competition.
Sure.
In our case, it's the midge. It's thriving. Then as it's going to deeper, the midge also deals well with high salinity. Well, I think of all the cattle ponds once again, and I think, well, what are a lot of farmers doing? They put that 50-pound brine salt block uphill from that pond. All that salt washes in, kills every single beneficial, critter you could say in the pond, except for the midge. So now you just bred it further. So and furthermore, you go into it even like, and I look at commercial farming versus when we had a bunch of family farms. Where's the 9-10 kids and they all took care of the farm. There was pasture ground, there was buffer strips, all this. Now it's a cornfield right next to a stream. All that fertilizer that was injected just goes right in that stream, kills off the whole system except for the midge. So our practices for human consumption has actually worsened our ecological systems, and now we just pretty much made our problem worse because we forgot about it, forgot the water. And so we know everything about food plots, we know everything about this and that, trees, you name it, but no one was looking at the water. So like in our home state of Wisconsin, we've lost north of 70% of our trout streams, and it's all from agriculture pollution and from cattle walking in streams and once again disturbing everything.
That's a good point, because we do have a lot of, we're in Iowa here, but it's hilly. It's not like maybe your standard, what everybody would think Iowa is, flat cornfields. Like down here in southeast Iowa, we got a lot of hills, we got a lot of small streams and creeks running all the time. Sometimes they'll dry up through the summer, but sometimes it's just a trickle. I know it rains, but that's everybody around here uses, including ourselves. We use our chemicals for crops and our food plots and 100%. Stuff like that. And I could see get that getting into these streams.
And there's so many BMP practices, better management practices that could be used, like the CRP buffer strips and all that kind of stuff. But you see a lot of them going away because we're trying to do more.
We want to use every inch of real estate we can.
100%.
Every kernel of corn or bean that we can get.
Yeah.
But then you
got
look
2 more bushels because I took that row of trees out.
But then you look at the pond that's just downstream from that farm field, and it's green and
worst thing you could give a farmer is a dozer.
And not that we're obviously against farming, but it's just been the lack of focus of we destroy the water, but no big deal. That doesn't make me money.
I could be the same thing with fertilizer probably too, right? I mean, fertilizer, certain chemicals in it. Fertilizer is gonna
100%.
Gonna contaminate.
Yeah, because once again, a lot of these
kill off that bacteria.
And that's even another point. It kind of leads me even to the EHD-Fense. So when everyone hears bacteria, everyone just thinks bad right away. Obviously realize there's so much beneficial bacteria. Like we have a lot of beneficial bacteria in our own.
I'm sure we have it on our skin.
In our guts, everything. Yeah. And same goes with water. So your beneficial bacteria are also the first ones that kind of get wiped out when these systems get degraded. Well, so you just have anaerobic bacteria that doesn't do any. They're the guy that goes to McDonald's every day and doesn't ever do anything for their health. That's the anaerobic bacteria. But then, so with the EHD-Fense, we're augmenting that and actually adding aerobic bacteria that are the heavy lifters. They're hard workers. Okay. They're the ones that are going to take and actually restart up the nitrification process. They're going to take out ammonia. They're going to take the phosphorus that's free reactive phosphorus or available phosphorus, bind it, so now it's non-usable. And so like phosphorus and nitrogen, those are your limiting factors no matter what in water always. If you're low on phosphorus, low on nitrogen, you don't have growth. That was always our goal as pond managers and lake managers, is we want to see low levels of nitrogen and phosphorus. And that's what good bacteria does for you.
How about pH?
pH, honestly, doesn't do too much just because it doesn't change rapidly.
Okay.
Now, with that said, you can get a rainstorm that comes in, and our rain's typically a little more on the acidic side. And let's say if it hits a pond right way, it can kill all the fish because there's a rapid pH change or a temperature change. Okay. But pH overall is pretty stable.
Okay.
So like I can even go into different parts of my state and pretty much almost tell you like, oh, this is gonna be about 8.2 in a 5 county zone, just because it's so stable. But you get into temperature variances, you get into, like I said, the nitrates, nitrites, total ketosyl nitrogen, total phosphorus, free reactive phosphorus. You get into all these different things, and that's what sparks its growth. So with the EHD-Fense and knowing the Lakosky's midge loves impaired water, which is highly eutrophic water, very aged water, And this is what I did for a living with the ponds is we always wanted to either stop the clock of Mother Nature or reverse it. Because Mother Nature wants to take any water hole, and you guys have all seen this where things start growing and it grows worse the next year, grows worse the next year. And all it is expediting it grows, and eventually she's going to take it and make it a swamp. That's what Mother Nature wants to do.
Okay.
She wants to take your water and turn it back into ground,
Yeah.
pretty much. But those are also the systems that don't have beneficial life. They're super nutrient poor. You can actually I could grab the mud, and I'll do it even later today when we walk around the ponds, but I can smell healthy ponds just by grabbing the mud.
Really?
And because when you get a pond that's very poor ecosystem health, it'll smell like rotten eggs.
Okay. So that's your poor health.
Like you want to smell it.
So when you're dredging, you're cleaning out your pond, or you're pulling
Yep.
weeds or something, and you can smell that, that sulfury,
Yep.
rotten
It's not
egg
healthy.
smell.
Yep.
That's a bad
So like even when I think northern states ice fishing, you can actually have where you drill a hole and you'll get like a puff of kind of methane sulfur smell. The lake's dying.
Right.
And there's a good chance it's gonna have a fish kill because of it too.
Okay.
So with that said, we're stripping all this nutrients, we're cleaning the water up, making it more high water quality. So now we're starting to get, and I actually just seen this on a client's pond I was just at yesterday. I treated the pond 2 weeks ago with the EHD-Fense, and it was cloudy, murky, little green hue. And yesterday I was there, it was crystal clear. There's frogs in there, there's beetles, there's life. I want to see life. Because if you do, because that was one of the big things when we were especially testing streams is if you didn't see life, something bad happened. There was some pollution factor, something's happening, and now we have a issue we have to fix. So I do the same with my small little 20 by 20 ponds, my little wildlife ponds, where if I go there, I'm like, I don't see a tadpole, I don't see a beetle, I don't see a dragonfly, but I'm seeing a lot of mosquitoes. There's no predators. So it kind of.
So the mosquito's a predator of the midge?
No. So
they're similar. If you've seen mosquitoes, there's something.
There's no predator.
There's no predators to eat those.
That's a good indicator.
So like for instance, like in Wisconsin, we see this a lot, especially northern Wisconsin, where there's a lot of just mosquito production. Usually, if we have a good dragonfly hatch, we don't have a mosquito year. Whereas if we don't have a good dragonfly hatch,
So can we breed dragonflies? We need to find a way to
breed dragonflies.
Yeah.
Joe, we can't do everything. Joe, I've got enough on my plate.
he's out there just
little dabs. Take a little bit of this pollen, a little bit of this, and then.
Well, like I said, that's sometimes I look at ponds like I have a bunch of weeds that growing in one, and it's like total salt, but it's filled with frogs and stuff. Maybe it's not necessarily bad, and so that's maybe what
The prime
I would like
example,
to learn is that for everybody to look at their ponds and say, okay, this is a bad one, this is a good one. Okay, maybe on my bad ones, I'm just going to take your excavator and drain the dang things out.
Pull the dam out, let it go, let it turn
let
back
it go.
into dirt.
So over where I found that dead deer yesterday, that new pond we put in South Smith, that pond just east, surrounded by the cedar trees.
Yeah.
There's not a single fish in there, but
Yeah.
there's a million frogs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's covered. So, and the water is kind of clean and clear looking.
Yep.
So, is that a good sign?
Yeah, so because once again, like an amphibian, like a frog, with how their skin membrane is, they'll take in any pollution, any kind of things. They're affected really quick. They'll leave that water quick, and they'll go find a better water quality source. And
It's loaded, but there's no fish. Or at least I can't catch one. I tried.
So what would be the best indicator for just the lay folk to be able to go out and check their pond and see if it's a good breeding ground for the midge, or if that's something that they want to look into treating, or if they're happy with it, and this is the target we want. Like, what can the average person do to check their water?
First thing is gonna be odor. If the pond's giving off an odor, it's dying. There's a high level of just muck and decomposition occurring. So first is odor. If you go up and you're like, oh, this pond always stinks.
Yeah,
That's
you
not
could just
good.
reach into the bank and pull some of that sludge out. And if you smell that sludge,
And some of these ponds get so bad. Like, I mean, I helped out with a zoo up by us, for instance, where they had an odor issue. And so we applied actually the catalyst, our catapult product to it to get rid of the odor.
Right.
And I mean, I bet you in a week's time we had it gone. Because you think like a zoo,
No kidding.
everyone's going around and going like, oh, this pond stinks. Like,
yeah, it's not good for the public. Yeah.
No, so, odor is one. Coloration of the water. If you're getting more greenish tints, it can be that there's planktonic algae species, which we don't want planktonic algae species. We want more filamentous. So your stringy algae, those are healthier for systems typically. But also the muck. You can grab the muck. If it stinks like eggs or just like, oh, what is going on with this? I mean, a good healthy pond, when you grab the muck, it'll smell just like wet dirt. like just normal mud that you find when your kids are playing.
That was a
And I
good
think
indicator
this
that we talked about too, like that green water.
Yep.
Because I was just talking when we talked before. Our friend of ours, Skip Sly, he had one that he was finding some dead deer in, and he just pulled the bank out and just took the whole thing out. And even from like aerial views, you could see there was another big pond that was right by it, and it was like brown, and this one was totally green.
Yep.
And he's like, and I think maybe there might be something to it that you could even maybe get a first indicator of which ones that could be bad. Not that it necessarily is, but even from like an Onyx maps or Huntstand maps or any of your Google Maps, looking at it and say you can see the different coloration. Some are dark brown and some are green right next to it, and that might just be the green could be like duckweed on top or something too, which maybe isn't necessarily bad. I don't know.
Is the duckweed, is it a good thing for your pond?
To an extent. Like, I don't mind if there's a little duckweed around the edge. That doesn't bother me at all because it's actually a great filter. It takes out a lot of nutrients, but it's more when it starts shading up and then it starts,
It's our one on Moat is that way. It's just like total lily pads and it's just total green. You can't even see water
What
in
about
it right
temperature
now.
of water?
Yeah.
Is there a certain temperature that water gets to where it kills the midge or makes a better breeding ground for them?
I mean, it's going to be your hotter waters typically, but with that said, they'll go in cold water. If they're active, they're going to go in any temperature of water. But with that said, it's more the beneficial side that gets impacted. So like when you talk about growth around a whole pond, and say it's all algae covered, you go that top like foot of water, it's like 90 degrees in the middle of summer.
Sure.
Well, that's killing a lot of beneficial insects and beetles and all that stuff.
Is it okay?
So once again, we're losing that food chain.
Right.
So we don't want a lot of growth in a pond. Plus, like when you think like lily pads, like we talked earlier, like when you talk plant matter, and when it dies, that's your muck creator. It's the plants.
Sure, that's all organic
Whereas,
material.
whereas algae is comprised of about 95% water. So if you have algae, let's just say like a 2-foot band of algae around a pond, it's actually not a lot of biomass whatsoever.
Right.
It's more when you get a lot of plants, and that's putting all that muck, and now you're building the condominium
Yeah,
for
every
the
year
midge.
it grows and dies.
Yep.
Grows and dies.
Yep, and it's
So
gonna keep spreading.
now with your product, it's killing all the crap, and
So it's not killing anything, so there's no pesticidal means to it. But what it's so there's 3 components. There's catapult, which is an enzyme, so that's a biocatalyst, and what a biocatalyst does is speeds up biological processes. So in the case of the enzyme, what it's doing is it speeds up decomposition, because what the enzymes are going to do is it's going to start breaking down your organic matter into simple sugars, which might have took way longer previously because your enzymes weren't in
So
it.
the organic matter that may be in your shoreline.
Shoreline, the muck in the bottom of the pond,
Okay.
Everything that way. So that's going to start working on that to actually break it down into simple sugars like glucose, sucrose, fructose, and the bacteria feed on those sugars. So the next part of it is live water, which is a water-soluble pouch of beneficial bacteria. So it's all aerobic bacteria. You toss this little pouch right into the pond. If it's a small pond, it might be 1 pouch. If it's a bigger pond, it might be more.
Sure.
It dissolves in the water, and now those bacteria in the live water, those ones focus on the water itself. So it's going to work on, once again, restoring the nitrification cycle. It's going to start breaking down the phosphorus and the nitrogen. It's going to start working a little bit on the muck, but more so the organics that are suspended. That's why I even had to grab that sample. So I wanted to see kind of what was in that column of water, because there's sometimes organics that are just free floating, right? So detritus and things that way. I'll start breaking that up. Then the last part, and I always kind of call it the heavy lifter, is demuck, and that's a pelletized bacteria. It's actually more of like a benthic beneficial bacteria. That's going to work on actually breaking down
you
your
actually,
sludge.
Like throw in the product, goes to the bottom, and
It sinks right to the
activates
bottom, and then it'll do is it'll start, so it's all dehydrated, right? So it'll all hydrate. It'll start, and they're slow movers. That's one thing. So like the pouch, you can just toss. Like those will start moving throughout the water system. Same with the catapult will move through, just like if you added dye to a water glass, it's going to fill the whole volume of water. The muck pellets, the demuck, you actually want to broadcast them throughout the whole body of water.
Because when they sink in the mud, they're going to stay right there.
Yep.
You don't want to throw them all in one spot.
Yeah.
And that's generally going to be around maybe the first 4 feet or 6 feet or something of the water.
Correct.
And once it gets down, it's unless you got a shallow pond all the way
Yeah.
across. But if you got something that has
Yeah, like a bigger pond, like even when I used to do a lot of like sediment sampling, for instance, like I'd go into a center of, let's say, an acre pond, 12 feet deep. There might be 3 inches of muck in the center.
Okay.
You go to my shorelines and I have 2 feet. That's where all your muck creation
okay,
is.
so let's go back real quick though. So obviously everybody's thoughts on this are the hotter, the drier the summer,
Yep.
Your ponds are losing water, so they're losing everything it needs to be sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we seem to think, okay, well,
I
that's
always
the
thought when they
breeding
reseeded,
ground.
just to get exposed a bunch of mud.
Yeah, yeah.
Is
Right.
what I
But
always
basically,
thought.
what it's doing is just killing all the good stuff is dying off, and
Yep.
now you're just left with
Yeah.
crap.
And like I said, and they still need that water.
So when it's really wet, that's just all that rain and everything is helping that water source.
Got to flush.
Flush,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, depending, like, right? Like, I know a lot of guys that they'll put a pond in because they're like, well, I get all this field runoff. Well, don't do that. I don't want agriculture runoff in this damn pond. I want it away from the pond. Right. So with that said, you could also have the contrary where you get all these rains and it just really flush that pond. So like, for instance, like, when I was treating a lot of like stormwater ponds, every lawn around that stormwater pond and the HOA was greener than green, right? Well, every rain, that all that nitrogen and all that phosphorus is going to that pond. Green lawns are green ponds. So those ponds actually did better without a lot of rain because they didn't get all that nutrient flushing. So it can work for you and against you.
Okay.
And I guess the shallower the water gets too, the hotter it's going to get.
Yes.
So the more hot it is, the
Yep.
more it's going to kill your beneficial insects.
Yeah. I mean, it gets so hot.
bacteria.
I mean, some of these temps, I mean, there was some years where, like, so I was a chemical applicator too, a commercial applicator. And there was times where we actually had to put a pause on just treating water because it got so hot. I mean, we had surface temps
Well, sure, you
over
get-
100 degrees.
It's that dark water. It's seen that dark bottom,
Yep.
just like anything
Yeah,
dark.
so
or
we couldn't
black, it's
treat
gonna
because
draw
we
that
would
sun.
kill every fish,
Right.
because they're already stressed. So same goes for all these amphibians and insects and vertebrates. They're already stressed, so this heat can adversely impact the whole ecosystem.
How quickly does your product rebound these water sources? Like, what are you seeing? Like, how long does it take?
Sure. So I just talked to my one client's pond where it was 2 weeks. It went from green grows to, like I said, it's crystal clear with life everywhere.
How big was that?
That one was about 25-foot diameter pond.
Okay. And we have a lot of those
Yeah.
in Iowa here. We
You know,
have
whereas-
cattle ponds are just ponds where a lot of times they grab material out to build
Yep.
up a roadway or something.
Yep.
They're just grabbing that clay and that material out to just build a roadway or fill in a
Yep.
hole. So you got these small
Holes.
ones. Some are small,
Yep.
some are fairly large, but you do got and they're
Yep.
mostly fairly shallow.
Yeah. So like a lot of those, it's easier to turn those ones around a little quicker than, let's say, like an acre pond might take a little bit more. But it all goes back to how impaired was the water, how destroyed was the ecosystem already. So, like in the pond management world, a lot of times, I'd do one treatment.
I was going to ask you how many.
And I'd come back and people were like, this is the best the pond's ever looked in 20 years. But I also had ponds where I'm like, this is going to take some legwork because it's so far gone because nothing was ever done to it. Like I think of the back 40 pond where he's like, oh, this was my grandpa's and we used to swim in it as kids. I heard that one a lot.
Yeah.
Then I go there and there's a 40-foot wall of cactus. I'm like, well, this would be fun to launch a boat in. And, so some of those might take longer. But like, the cool thing about like the products that are built into EHD-Fense. So like I had a pond I used to manage with similar products, and but with that said, in 15 years of just managing for actual pond health rather than just killing, because just treating like algae plants, that's a Band-Aid. It just recycles. But in 15 years, I never treated the pond. Never had to put a chemical into it. It just beneficial products. Now over time, I've been able to formulate and find the best blends. You could say like there's some out there that are junk that I would never touch upon with. These ones are ones that I've been able to research and work with, microbiologists on and be like, this is it. I've seen the fastest results, and so I was able to take, I guess, that whole world of me being a biologist for 20 years and fine tune it until we were able to put a good proprietary blend together for this EHD-Fense. And so to get back to your question, it might be, like I said, one treatment. It might be a season of treatment. It might be in it for a couple years.
But okay, so that one treatment, say it works.
Yeah.
Now, how long is that pond good for, or how? What
the,
happens?
The goal
from
is
there?
the goal is always, even if let's say the pond got restored, and after the first application, I still recommend every month going in there and applying, because what happens with beneficial bacteria is they go through a boom and bust cycle. So bacteria will start growing, they'll thriving, it's reproducing, it's eating, and it'll crash. So you get a lot of this if you're not applying. So with that said, you start doing monthly, and now instead of this happening, you're stabilizing that wave.
Right.
So instead of having big boom bust cycles, which is also not good for anything, it'd be like having a bunch of rain and then 30 days of drought, right? You don't want big changes.
So like for Iowa here, it'd say, 3-4 months. And I mean, I don't know if you do it in the wintertime and that, it would be, just for somebody, okay, I'm going to start in like April or May, and like April, May, June, July, August, 5 months worth or whatever.
Yep.
Doing it, and then it starts getting cold and maybe you don't have to worry about it, or
so typically like the management season, as I kind of always treated it, is like April, May through September, October, depending on how the year is. So like the kit is built to do 5 months. Not saying you should have some extra on hand because, I'll get into that a little bit, but I try to get that cycle, because what happens is the pond in March doesn't know it's a pond yet. The temperature hasn't got high enough. There's no growth yet. The ponds look the best in the spring. I was like showing up when I was managing ponds, be like, oh, this is the best pond's gonna look, because I knew there was a really bad pond.
Yeah.
But with that said, you start getting into May and that temperature starts rocketing, and suddenly June, July happens, and then you get the dog days of August, and so now you have this big peak. You want to be going past that season until you're starting to get those big temperature swings down again. So it might be where, let's just say we have a weird year and we're in the 70s till November. You might want to be actually applying through November.
Gotcha.
Well, the nice thing, I just saw your video on doing it. It was really takes you a minute. To
it's
run around it.
so quick. I mean,
So we're not frost seeding our ponds.
and that was honestly a big thing, because like I love hunting age for deer, whatever. That's me. I like hunting big bucks, like I know you guys do too.
Sure.
And so with that said, I also know if you go too much into a property and you keep bumping that mature deer, he doesn't tolerate that very long. So the whole goal is low intrusion with the kit. I want it super simple. Not that you're going out there and like filling up a backpack sprayer and doing this and like, okay, now I gotta fill up the blower and do this. And
Right, because a lot of these ponds are hidden in the timber,
I mean, this is simple enough where, I think that one day it took me 55 seconds and I'm videoing and talking.
Right.
So you're probably at risk of 30 seconds by a pond and you're done. I mean,
That's awesome.
The pouch, like I did a video a while back and I was on my tractor actually tilling, was by the pond, grab, toss it, kept driving. It's so simple as that.
So there might be like an initial reclamation process of getting all that muck, and then maybe just the maintaining it. After that, you get a lot of that muck over how.
Well, I think that's a good point. Is that because some of the we just put in like this year or last year or 2 years ago, and they're probably pretty healthy still. Right now, they're not a bunch. Doesn't have any muck in them anyway, and we dug them down. Steep sides and deep and stuff like that. Now would be time. Hey, you got a new one. Just keep up with it, and you'll never have a problem. But then we have other ones that have been there for a long time that are just
like even this year. I put in a couple. Even like the tubs and the deer ponds. Right. Like once I put them in, I'm already putting product in there. I want to kickstart my ecosystem up.
When you say a tub, I mean just like a water.
Like one of those
small
200.
water truck. We just got done.
Yeah.
So you want to do the same thing to those.
The only thing I don't do like on a brand new like tub or deer pond is I don't sometimes I'll hold back on the demuck for a little later just because you don't have muck yet.
Right.
Yeah, ours we never have. They drink it in a week, so they're just filling them up.
Let me explain. Let me ask you this, being that you're the water guy. So last year we noticed when we filled up these grizzlies that they made for us, they're awesome. But when we used water out of our spigot, they wouldn't touch it right away until it got dirty.
That's what we're talking.
Sure.
That's what he's
Then the
talking about.
dirtier the water got,
in the ground.
then the deer would drink it.
Yep.
And could it be the chlorine? Like
Because we had city water.
we were
Oh,
just
without
putting
a
city
doubt.
water.
Yeah.
They wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
And then now we kick some dirt in there and stir it up and make it dirty.
Well, and the thing is too is it's like I always seen and you always hear like deer prefer dirty water, and it's not that they prefer, and there's a clarification there. It's not that they want poor water quality, so it can be dirty as all heck, but be good water quality. But a lot of it is dirty water is also usually mineral enriched water. So from runoff and things that way, the mud has natural minerals. Like you talk about, where big bucks are in the different states, and it's always where the mineral veins are and things that way. So deer can sense that. But now if it's chemically treated at one point, they can smell that. They can sense that. They're going to go to a source where they're like, all right, no one.
So maybe that after we're filling up our ponds with water that we get out of the faucet. We have public water
Yeah.
here, and
But it
that
seems
might
like they
have
got used to it though, because now the minute you fill up, they're drinking those down
Yeah, and it's like
they're
everything.
really
Like we've
one
talked
a
like
week,
at
80
first you're
gallons
like,
a week.
Yeah.
what is this? But then they're kind of at a time like, oh, that's what I got.
Yeah, it's clean, or at least it's not.
Yeah.
And it's funny too. We noticed when you sink them in the ground, they like them more than they don't. Like those 100 gallon, big black ones sitting up. They don't like to stick their head over there. I don't think. But the ones in the ground, they like to step down in there.
Well, and a lot of that goes actually even too. So it goes with their feeding habits too. It's all about how their pupil is. So they have a lateral pupil. When they put their head down, that pupil rotates, so they can still see as visual. When they're still doing this, it's limiting some field of motion. When they're feeding everything, they're still seeing everything. So it's such a natural process for them to be down
To the ground.
Yeah. Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
But it's not like that water is not like that anymore, though, because Joel just filled mine up back here, and
bang.
he was gone 10 minutes later. I showed him the deer.
I was 10
and
minutes doing another one over here, and he sends me a picture, and there's already deer drinking out of it. So
That's
that's
crazy.
No, I will say too, what's cool, like the catapult product, for instance, too, that'll actually help break down some of those items in there too quicker. So it'll actually make it a little fresher, you could say too, more rapidly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this. Like, if we have, like, ponds in the timber,
Yep.
so all those leaves are falling in. Is that going to create muck a lot faster than ones that grow out in the open?
Yes, other than oak leaves. Oak leaves take a long time to degrade.
Yeah, it is mostly oak.
Yeah, so oak leaves a lot of times, and it's like just talking to my old colleagues and stuff like that back in the aquatic biologist field, is I remember talking to one gentleman and he said, if I can ever figure out a product to break down oak leaves, I'll be a millionaire, because there's nothing naturally that really breaks them down that rapid. It's a lot of lignans and tannins in it. Whereas like you have maple leaves, ash, elm, basswood, whatever it might be, they break down rapid. So oak leaves, a lot of times you're raking out.
Oh, that's
the
right.
pond,
Yeah,
you'll
you
see-
will.
And when you dry
Oh.
you're going around and cleaning
It'll
it
be
up.
all the
It's
oak
leaves.
leaves. Yep, they'll be black, but that's it.
Wow.
But they're not going to be degraded. So that takes a way longer process. Plus, when oak leaves go in or two, now they can affect pH because of all the tannins.
Yeah, they did get acidic.
And usually then those ponds are usually darker as well, because all the tannins, once again, lignans are going into the water. So that's why those waters are usually more brown as well. It's just staining. Nothing.
Is that bad?
Nope. Nothing to ever worry about.
Acidic.
I mean, it's going to be a little more acidic, so, the deer to me always they have their own personalities, right? So maybe one deer is like, oh, this one just doesn't taste right. I'm going to go to that
This
one.
one likes it.
I mean, to me, deer are, I always treat deer kind of like my kids. They're picky eaters, right? Deer are picky to a point. They're not going to just eat to eat, but same with water. If they have a preferred source, they're going to go to that preferred source. I think of even livestock. Livestock will go across a whole field to go to somewhere that's better for grazing or for drinking, rather than the one that's like close to the barn that might be junk.
Our buddy Kevin Boyer, who does a lot of our soil work down in Illinois and stuff, we were talking about that too. He's doing some bunch of tests on water, because you get certain ponds that every deer wants to go to, like our Butler farm.
Butler was amazing.
If you had a deer, a buck, it was going to that pond. And there's 100 ponds all over the place. Because it was a cattle place. I mean, all these farms here used to be cattle farms.
And it was weird because this one was surrounded by, it's
shaded.
It's
and
shaded.
It's only like this deep. They walk
They
in
just
there.
stand in there for hours, mostly bucks.
Yeah.
Mostly the bucks.
I wonder if that's like a mineral rich.
And it's super shallow and something like that. That's what we were going to do,
Yeah.
because is there some mineral you could put in your ponds that would say, okay, they're going to use this because they want to keep them out, or maybe put them in your tubs, or your ones that you make for deer, to try to keep them out of the ones that maybe
Even like
bad.
one of my mentors that I worked for a few years, but he was kind of like the father of our industry in Wisconsin for aquatics. And he did those studies years ago of why deer prefer certain ones, and it was all based on mineral richness. That's what he came down. It wasn't as much, there's a little bit of pH, but once again, pH is pretty stable. Nutrients here and there. I mean, they can also sense when there's more phosphorus and things that way. But it all kind of went back to mineral richness.
It's probably no different than these natural leaks that you find
our Illinois
like
farm
our
has
Illinois
all
farm.
those
There's a natural
natural minerals.
seep in the ground, and they've got that thing the size of this room
It seems like it's
dug
salty.
out,
just
and
like
they're
a
in
spring,
there.
you mean?
And it's just mud, and they just can't.
Yeah, it gets this white crust on, so I was kind of figured it's salty or something maybe coming out of it, that they're just digging at that stuff all
and
the
that's
time.
the thing too, is animals are way smarter than we are, right? As a species, we're pretty stupid. So with that said, I mean, because we don't know if we're low on something. We're just like, I just don't feel good. Whereas an animal knows, I'm low on my salt. All right, I got to find no different why they go to different salt licks and all that stuff. They know they're low on something. They're always going to go, and that's why they feed on different browse at certain times of year, all that, because they know where the nutrient richness is.
But they wouldn't do it, salt would kill other organisms in a bug, so that's probably not the case. It's probably not salt. If you're talking minerals, because if you were to look at any mineral packet that you get from,
And it could just be honestly
source,
calcium,
probably
and it could be calcium carbonate. So calcium carbonate is also very rich, like especially in Illinois and Wisconsin, because you have a lot of limestone and things that way too. So it could be also a buildup of calcium, so that's very common. Well, think about calcium. Lactating does, bucks growing antlers.
Right.
So once again, that's a big draw.
I'm just brainstorming on stuff to put in your water sources. I mean, that's what we were taking soil.
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking all those water samples and seeing what was in there, but you don't want to take minerals. But like most of the minerals you put out for deer, 90% salt. It has the other stuff in. So I don't know that you necessarily want your water salty.
No, like that's one thing. Like I've always been against, and it was when everyone started pushing the big water additives, and I seen guys having high salt content, high phosphorus content.
Yeah,
those are things
that kills your pond.
Yeah, I mean, so when I started seeing these ones, and I remember kind of debating, one of the guys, I think it was at one of the shows, and I said, well, why do you have such a high amount of salt and phosphorus in here? Well, because it helps the deer. I'm like, yeah, but salt kills everything aquatic. Your phosphorus is a limiting nutrient of all growth in water. So you actually just did the
reverse.
Yeah. See, I wouldn't put it like, I don't even know, because like we had some analogics Oasis that but it's put in the tanks though, but they drink it in a week, so it's
that's
not,
way different. Yeah.
So, but I wouldn't be putting this stuff in my pond because
No.
I look at like the salt and stuff like that. It's like you wouldn't want that in your
But in
water
your-
like that
like-
in a
like in the
trough.
tubs
Something
and
that you're
stuff.
refilling them
Yeah.
every week or two.
Yeah, like those reservoirs, like, I think what is like there's the wild water, I think is one of them out there, whatever it is. But yeah, you have those trough systems where they drink it away, but it's also it's not an ecosystem. It's a watering system.
I'm not sure if they like salty water either. I'm not sure if they would.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so it goes down to it. But a pond, that I was always taught is that's a living, breathing organism. You got to treat it as such. If you don't treat it like it's living, it's gonna die. Whereas like a tank, it's not.
Yeah,
living.
right.
But
yeah,
now,
you're taking that.
But now you get an old
Water
tub
out
or something like that, you put it in the ground and you never cleaned it out, and it developed its own muck layer. Suddenly that pond just became into an ecosystem. So there again, I see that so many times where I go in and there's layers and layers of muck, inches of muck in these tubs. I'm like, when's the last time you cleaned it out? Never. Like, how long has it been in here? 10 years. So I always called that the aquarium effect. So when you get the tub side of it, little Johnny wins a goldfish at the state fair. Mom and dad go buy him a tank. He throws a goldfish in there, doesn't do anything because it's a kid, doesn't want to take care of it. The goldfish dies, the whole tank turns green, nothing lives in it anymore. Same thing can happen with these tanks and these tubs is the same exact thing, is if you don't take care of them. Like I always recommend my clients, I say you should be washing out your tubs either every year or every 2 years. You should be cleaning it all out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to have that happen. Or if you don't have the time, or let's say it's one of those larger ones that you're like, I just can't physically get out of the ground, either hand clean it out, or what I would recommend is like the EHD-Fense. You can apply these products to those tubs to start getting rid of the muck and breaking down everything.
Yeah.
So like, and you even kind of go back into the muck side of it. So like demuck, for instance, like just through testing so I did a couple case studies on sediment reduction. And in one season in a pond in Germantown, I reduced the muck by 7.21 inches.
Wow.
So when you're talking 3/4 of an inch, and that's the breeding ground for the midge, took away a lot of breeding space.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say like our average pond probably reduced 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches a year, but still that's a lot. That's a lot of home for the midge.
Yeah.
So that's what's kind of cool with the product is we're focusing on the pollution issue and the impaired water system by treating the water with the catapult and the live water, but then we're also taking away the ability for the adult midge to even reproduce because we're taking our muck layer away too. So over time, you're restoring the system and, like I said, not making it perfect for the midge.
All right.
Let's go. I know where there's a lot of ponds.
Yeah. So, but it's like I said, it's another thing. Like we dealt with the feed side of it, because you can kind of what Analogics did. They kind of mimicked because their parent company made vaccines, and so they kind of could mimic it as closely as they could. But you can't control how much they eat, all that stuff. Just like we're talking about, you just put it out there and you hope that it helps. And I think that we're seeing so many of our deer die late in the season, where it used to be always September. They were dead right away in velvet, and we're hardly seeing any of that anymore. Very few, but so many of them are dying like in November and December. Which, I guess, even to make it a little light to a dark thing is just at least like my big one, like on Smith, my big one that we had him at 10 yards. How many times? And it was like, now he's gonna be a pig, even though he's 5 years old. Let's leave him. But at least we have 100 pictures of him breeding and running does and everything.
Look at
Okay,
Drop-Tine
at least he bred a bunch. Same with Drop-Tine 8.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they died like end of November.
We found
from
him.
And so
that could even be a different, one of the slower types of EHD. Something
There
that
is there
doesn't
different
kill 'em
slower
over-
type. I don't know if
overnight,
it's
maybe.
that or
I mean,
if it's,
how many strains now? I know last year I thought I heard maybe Skip was telling me it was like 2 and 4 was the prevalent strains that were tested in Iowa. But then I heard of strain 7, which they'd never seen before. Texas, yes, not up here.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I don't know of too many. I think the most I've ever heard of was like 3 to 4 different strains. But it's always gonna change into something. It's gonna morph into something, But like going back to even like your point, Lee, if you can make the ponds healthier, all this stuff where deer can combat disease a little better, be healthier overall. Because there too, like we didn't get into like the whole bacteria side of it. It can be harmful bacteria that also hurts deer. Well, if they're sick, and then they get EHD, they could have just died, even though maybe they could have fought it. Or you're doing all the mineral, all the feeding, and deer are healthier, but then they get the midge and they just die later. So to me, it's about encompassing that whole. As hunters, we get so stuck on our 4-month season, but to me, it's 365.
For us, it's always been 365.
Yeah, it
but
has, and
we're
it
not,
has-
But that's not for your average guy
for,
around here, though.
and not for EHD either, though. I mean, it's like you're doing
general.
stuff for your fields
Yeah.
and timber work and trying to get CRP stuff established and trying to
Frost
really
seeding and-
and really working on. We've been the last few years been really working on timber stuff and invasives
Yep.
and they're getting that and clean, getting your timber healthy and
So-
stuff. We didn't talk about that, but like I think getting people more in the mindset of year round, you be thinking stuff, not just October 1st, blow the dust off your bow and let's go hunt,
And to me, that's kind of cool. Like even the EHD-Fense system is you're already done pretty much with your applications before hunting even started. So you're just doing we're all going out checking cameras. We're all doing that stuff. You're out there probably once a month,
So take the minute.
and then toss it in, drive away. So and then if you're able to do the other things, like if you're in a state that you can do the mineral, it's all encompassing.
Right.
But to me, water is the building block of life. Everything starts and ends with water, in my opinion. I mean, that's probably why I call myself the industry water nerd. But I think water is a top thing for me, a top priority. But you get into it, also like Lee and I talked a while back, even about forage consumption. If water consumption goes down, because let's say you don't have the good water sources, they're not available, forage consumption directly correlates with water consumption. Water consumption goes down, forage consumption goes down, deer's unhealthier, now it could die.
Yeah, because I talked to some guys like the way I brought that up is a friend of mine down in Texas. They do a lot of research stuff down there, but they're finding like at their protein feeders, if they had the water source right at their protein feeders, they'd eat 30% more protein.
Really?
If they had the water source right there next to it. So that's why.
I
That's
did the
why we've
same
been
thing,
doing. We've been
putting
putting all of
water
our
for
water
next to the
tanks
feeders,
next to
yeah.
our feeders, just so they got water and food there, and maybe they won't go to water someplace else,
Makes
or
sense.
maybe
We
they
sit
just
down for dinner,
lay down
we,
right
we have a
there.
drink with us every time we sit down
Yep.
for dinner or lunch. Or,
So let me ask you this: to hit on something you talked about earlier, you talked about all these buffer strips, CRP buffer strips against any of your water sources. How much room do you need? 50 feet? I mean, what, like in your years of...
We usually try to shoot for like a 20-25 foot buffer at minimum around pond edges. So like it's like this, I brought the stormwater ponds, right, with the HOA and all the green lawns. We try to put always a 20-25 foot buffer of prairie around it, because obviously you have the long tap roots and things that way. If you're not able to put the time into prairie, because I get it's expensive seed, but like all my wildlife ponds, I have a big buffer strip of perennials. Because I don't want to be tilling the soil and working all these things up, getting all this runoff. So I would say 75% of mine I'll have clover.
So 20 to 25 feet's a...
That's a great start. I mean, if you can do more, do more.
Gotcha.
But that's about where I usually kind of target
It's
it.
a good note, just for people to...
Yeah, so you're talking having vegetation around them for a period. What about stone, for example? Like I've been taking my ponds and just kind of dressing them.
Yep, like with
Dressing
stone
up the
riprap
stone,
and stuff that way.
Yeah, just even finer stone where the banks are stone
Yep.
and they come out 10 and 12 feet each.
Hey,
all
show
the
a
way
picture. I mean,
all the way around
I
there.
think that's just keeping
Yeah,
all
I have
the.
Yeah, so
you're not having any mud. There's no place if you can keep that rock there.
and actually
I
the
think
stone,
there's no mud there.
It also is stone's a great habitat source also. So for a few reasons. So for one, obviously, if you have stone, then you can get more of the aquatic predators that can obviously live and breathe in there. Frogs are going in there, tadpoles are going in there. They're going to still live on that. But also, more importantly, beneficial bacteria, they need to actually have a biomedia to attach to.
So the stone allows them to.
They'll crawl all over that stone, because sometimes you'll even go like in stone, and right before that water line, it's like I always laugh when people would buy this really expensive colored stone and put it on there. Like, 'cause I used to put line ponds in like bigger ones.
Yeah.
They'd be like, I want the most expensive, prettiest stone. I'm like, well, that stone below the water's gonna be brown. Because it all gets covered by a biomedia, and that's all
Which
bacteria.
is a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
that's kind of what I was talking
Yep.
about. So I got several of those. The stone
Yep.
goes down, but I have access to fill them up and keep
Yep.
them full and keep them from getting stagnant too.
Yeah.
But,
Now, like one thing
so-
I've done with ponds like that, with rock around the whole edge, is I'll go back through and actually do an aquatic planting in that stone.
Okay.
So I'll put sedges, I'll put rushes, irises, arrowhead, which arrowhead's a really good one. It can actually act as an aquatic food plot too, because deer crave it. So now you actually put plants in there that'll put their root systems into the stone,
Yeah.
right? But they're also then actively filtering out nutrients too. You don't want cattails and things like that can spread like wildfire. But
Right.
like I said, you get like porcupine sedge, bilebrush sedge, blue flag iris. I mean, you start putting these plants staggered on that pond.
Kind of on the edges, they're not growing in the water.
Correct.
They're just
Yeah,
up on
right,
the
kind
top.
of right where that water and stone, kind of meet. We always liked having aquatic plants, and a lot of those sedges and rushes don't want to go deep. They'll maybe stay in that like 6 inches of water range. They
And
won't.
that's where the midges have to. If so on your pond, if you can avoid having mud at that water line, that's gonna be your biggest defense
Is
against
it
it.
Definitely
so
helps.
much mud or is it muck?
So it's. I would say muck, because it has to be organic rich. If it's just mud, like when new ponds dug, right? It's mud.
That's clay.
But
Yeah.
there's no organics.
Yeah.
It's just
Gotcha.
it's a non-organic material. They can't feed because they need to feed on that detritus. They need to feed on that material.
Yeah.
So
all
it's not.
that decomposing.
That's why like a pond, when you first dug it, you're like, wow, this pond's great. It can swim in it. It looks, because it hasn't figured out it's a pond yet. Then eventually
It's a
Mother
pool
Nature
at that point.
Then Mother Nature looks over your shoulder like mine, and then she starts growing things right away. And then you start getting the muck layer. So that's why it's like, we talked when you get a new pond, it's really important to start applying these products in there ASAP. Like line ponds. I mean, the biggest one I ever put on was 43 acres. But we put line ponds in for all the people all the time. And right away they'd be like, oh, this pond looks great. I'm like, it's going to turn. Mm-hmm. So it was always a harder sell to tell them we had to start applying products. So they're like, well, it looks great. Why would we apply stuff right now? I'm like, because it's going to get
future.
there. So we beat Mother Nature to the punch, essentially. We claim it.
So
and take care
like
of it.
on heavy rainfalls and you get a mud puddle somewhere, that's not your worry.
It can be if it stays there for a while.
Yeah, because like I said, it has to. If that water goes away and the eggs hatch,
Yep.
they have that larvae
Nothing to
needs the
survive.
water.
Yeah,
to
like to me, if you have a rut that's sitting there for weeks, you should be filling that rut in. Like if there's a pocket in that in your driveway where you're like, and it's like more
Water
like,
sits there for.
yeah, it could be a breed zone as long as there's that organic detritus and things for it to feed on. So with it, don't overlook those areas either to get rid of those spots. Like I had one on my own farm that there was a spot where it got rutted because we had 9 inches of rain in one rainfall. I went and I stoned the whole thing and filled it all back in. So,
Like I said, Joel, do all that on mine at the 400. All those, they got to be holes and holes and deeper and
Yeah.
deeper and deeper, and those things never went away.
Yep.
They're always there.
and that can just be just as much of a house for the midge as your pond is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, makes
to me,
total
try to get
sense.
rid of those, improve the water quality, like through EHD-Fense. And now, all right, you have good water. You took away other possibilities, like in there too. I mean, there's other steps, like I talked about, even tires. Tires can have the mud and all that in it. Get rid of the garbage. I mean, there's those next steps
Now,
to take.
let's talk about creeks that are kind of hard to control.
Yes.
So
that's gonna
creek
be
gets up, goes down, you got water sitting in there.
Mm-hmm. If it's flowing water, it's not to worry.
Right, but
But
I'm
if
talking
it's
about.
stagnant,
Yep.
that's when, if there's no flow to the water, that's like, if there's a period like, we get through a drought like we had like last year, for instance, saying the stream's not running. Really, you could go and treat that. You can apply products temporarily for
Probably
it.
not as bad though, because even our
Correct.
small creeks, every time it rains, it's going to flush that water out. It's going to be new. It's not sitting there stagnant for that long.
Where I
maybe
see it more is
between
like,
rains,
it's like when you get those eddies off to the
Yeah.
side and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those you can treat, and that's what's cool. Like even like demuck, you can spot treat with that. So because it sinks, so you don't want to. You can get.
So you don't have to worry about it washing
Yeah,
away if
washing
it rains
away.
the next day.
Correct. So like for instance, like one of our biggest clientele, a lot of times would be like lake properties. You only could treat your frontage, but you could actually go like with demuck and apply that to your frontage right in front of your property
up there now.
to get rid of your muck. So
Right.
because it sits there.
So like in front of Lee's cabin, all
Yep.
that muck, instead of having the roller roll around and
you can spot treat it with demuck.
Even with our weed roller, it's nice 'cause it brings all like it's nice and sand, but there's holes, and they just fill with muck, and you step in those. But the weed roller can't
Sure.
get down that deep, so
Sure.
that would be something to drop some of those
Yeah.
into those and get rid of that muck out of there.
100%. Whereas like, when you get more like the live water and catapult, like let's say if you have a flowing stream, because I've had a lot of questions people ask, like, can I treat a creek that's free flowing? There's ways you kind of can. It's like drip systems and stuff that way, but it gets way more technical, and I'd say a little more.
but it's
over the top
probably not as big as an issue.
as a big stagnant.
You're
pond.
probably talking not EHDs wise. They're
Yeah.
probably talking creeks to
Yeah,
keep
it's
them healthy and
because I think even
fish
too,
or something.
mosquitoes aren't as prevalent either on a moving stream as they are that pond. That's
yeah,
stagnant.
like so.
They need that water tension intact because that's where they're obviously living. and
Down
breathing.
on my old house, down on McKee Creek, it was a sandy, gravelly creek.
Yep.
And it's big, it's 100 yards
Yep.
wide. Hardly ever. I mean, I don't know if I ever saw a deer
Yep.
that I thought was EHD dead.
Yep.
There's just no mud.
Yeah.
And it was just
yeah.
gravel. Gravel
usually
and
hard
sand.
bottom. Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you never see cattails unless it's like a tributary or
Yeah.
something where it can pond up and,
And
fill
then
up
sit
stay
there.
You don't ever see.
Yeah, it's
it.
more like the creek systems that do have those areas where they pool up and things that way. Those ones are the more issue. But yeah, like you get a hard bottom stream, it's not the concern. For
Even when it goes down. Yeah.
No, I mean a hard bottom stream, typically there's enough flow that it's never been able to even accumulate any sort of sediment.
Gotcha.
Period.
Right. Wow.
How about
Awesome.
like on some of these ponds, like in the past where I've had, a bunch of weeds growing in them, like the one we'll look at in the past, like when Matt was working for me, he'd go get Duron and put it in there to clean all those up. But it's like, so a product like Duron would kill all the weeds out of it. So basically it was like, what just seemed
Killing
like,
everything.
but is that killing all the everything in there as well?
Yeah, so
goods
like
too.
anytime you treat algae or weeds, I mean that's when you got to be really particular on your products, your algicides, your herbicides. They have to be aquatic approved, because like for instance, like there is a version of Roundup that kind of glyphosate, I should say, that has a certain carrier that's safe for aquatics. You spray just Roundup into the water, you're gonna probably kill frogs. You can also, in high enough amounts, you can kill fish because the carrier kills them. It's not the product, it's not the active ingredient, it's the carrier. So like, for instance, like I remember like way back when, there was a farm pond and the guy was using simazine in it and nothing would grow. I mean, it made it into a
Right.
sterile bad thing until it was excavated and saying beneficial plants came back. Like that's how much of a nuke zone it created. Wow. So there is some that, or like picking the right, if you ever had to actually chemically treat, there's a science to picking the right ones.
Okay, and
So
that'd
you
be
can
good to
protect
know
life.
too, because
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's bad or not. I mean, look at this.
And that's
pond
what
I'm
the
telling you.
thing is,
But we
most
found
people
a couple
don't
dead
know.
ones.
Yeah.
We found dead ones in there in the past, but you don't know if it's like, it's not necessarily that they got it there. It just happened to be the water that they went to when they started getting a fever.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Sometimes, like I just kind of want to clean up because I thought, let's get the weeds out of there because these deer can just walk in there and drink instead of like, okay, walking into a bunch of weeds and
Yep.
drinking, and
Yep.
that maybe that water would be cleaner without all the weed matter in there.
Yep.
But maybe it's not for them. I'm not 100% sure on that. So that's why
Yeah,
I'd like
I definitely like
to
to
look
keep
at 'em
weeds low. I mean, there's some plant species that are beneficial in certain amounts. Like there's one called Cara, which is a macrophytic algae, looks like a weed that naturally filters the pond. So like and that's where it's like, I've been dealing with that for decades, a couple decades now. But there's some that are like, leave that one be because it is actually promoting health. But a lot of people look at a pond and go, I'm just gonna nuke it. And that's not what,
right.
we don't want to do that, So, but like you get into like lilies. Lilies can be a really bad thing if they left untreated because they'll just keep on filling their muck and spreading until they're just a big old lily.
So those, and I have those kind of things too. So when we get to those ponds, I'll ask you what product of what will you take to do this. We can put it up on the screen too, so people can see. Because like I said, you don't like Fred. I didn't care about if there was beetles living in it or frogs living. I wanted it for deer. I just, let's just throw Duron in here and kill all these out so they can walk in and drink water out of the thing. But then maybe, like I said, maybe that's just making it worse down the road because you're not having other things. It's just a place that we're only midges can breed, but it doesn't have the other things to eat those. So we were going to do this last weekend, and he had next day me some, but I didn't use that because I was like, I had too many questions on it still about which ones and stuff, and I didn't have anybody here to film or anything, because I wanted to really show how we do this. I said I'm not going to waste and go put it in some. I'll do it now while we're here, so I still have those two, because I wanted to just that it's only a week later, so I just make sure I'm doing it right and how much and for sizing of ponds and all that kind of stuff.
It's kind of point out too is like I've been asking people are like, can you do too much? Because like chemical, you can do too much, right? Sure. So like the demuck product, through research they found it actually make it harmful. In 1 acre pond, you'd have to put 2 million pounds in.
Ooh. To make it harmful.
It's like $40 million worth of product.
Mm-hmm. Ain't happening.
No. Same with like the enzymes. You literally have to like 20 foot diameter pond. You'd have to put probably a couple thousand gallons of the product in there. So it's not.
So it's really the amount
can't overdo it really.
Not. No. I mean, so it's minimal.
If you're undersizing your pond or oversizing your pond,
you're not going to hurt it.
Yeah, I mean,
there's plenty of apps out there now. Like if you're you can an area, you're not like our Onyx. You can measure the size of a pond. And
you don't know how deep it is, but at least you can get kind of close to saying
and that's why
how much water's in
so like the kit. That's why so we designed it where it's either 5 tubs for 5 months or it's 1 pond up to 2,500 gallons.
Okay.
But then we also have the option if you have like larger ponds in your property, then we have an outfitter kit and things that way.
When you say larger pond, what would that larger pond be?
It's like to me, like when you start getting larger pond, it's like, quarter acre or bigger.
Okay.
You start getting more that volume and stuff. Because what happens is you go from the little ponds that have no stratification, they have turnover, but they have no stratification, no thermocline. You get bigger ponds, and now you have these different biological processes in play. So there is a transition from our deer ponds, at least how we think about them, like I said, 25-foot diameter ponds. Yeah. To me, that's a wildlife deer pond. You get bigger ponds, the fishery ponds, then it changes a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So how many years behind your house?
That's good for you to know too.
Yeah, that's 4 acres, 3.5 acres, 3.75 acres is what I put behind. I just recently.
But it's deep.
It's deep. It's we're almost 40 foot deep in the one side, 35 to 40 foot.
Yeah,
deep,
so it would alter it a little bit because volume comes into play with some of the products, but like the demuck, well, you just be treating
the shoreline. Sure.
The enzyme, a lot of times we did a based off surface acre, not acre foot. So like 3.5 acres, per application, you'd probably want to do about 3.5 gallons every month of the catapult.
Okay.
The live water, typically it was like about, anywhere from like 5 to 10 pounds per acre a month, depending on how impaired the water was. So that's where kind of like my knowledge comes in, and I'm available for everyone too, is like if you have that pond, that was what I did for a living, was make management protocols and programs. We're going to be like, each month is what you do. Spill it all where it's like you literally can look at your email or whatever it is, and you're like, all right, Zach says do this
okay,
month.
So Zach, like on this pond that Joel put in, being that it's new, how many years before you'd start to see issues? There's no trees around it.
That was a question I was going to ask too. It's like mine is a little bit more unique situation because I wanted to have, so I built it. It's 3 3/4 acres encompasses, and about 1 acre of that, 3/4 of an acre of that is encompassing old trees that were there. Basically, took a bowl, dammed up a big bowl, so there's that old vegetation that's in there. There's old root systems and all that from the trees that were in there. And I know that's going to probably turn that water a darker color too. And is that beneficial, or is that somewhere I need to look for acceleration because of having all that in there? All those organics are already kind of in the water on that side.
I've seen in a single season already a pond turn.
Okay.
I've seen it pretty quick sometimes. And there's ways like aquariums have it and stuff that way, but like I do water testing, for instance, where you send in your sample bottles and know how much phosphorus you have, and you kind of can actually be like, all right, I have no phosphorus, or like, oh, the nutrients is really high, it's going to grow quick.
Okay.
So it can turn really fast. In some ponds that are super nutrient poor, don't have berming to shed runoff away from and all that stuff. I've had some ponds last years.
I'm sure it also depends on how much fresh waters are coming in.
100%.
How much rain you get.
And you get droughts and all this kind of stuff. And the biggest thing is like, and another thing that hurts ponds is fluctuation. So if you have a pond that's dropping and raising, like there's one guy I help out with where he has a leak in his pond, and he'll let it drop like 4 feet and then he'll fill it back up. That just shocks that system every time. You're bringing cold well water in there that just drop the temp 30 degrees. and now it could kill everything. You know, so fluctuation's a big one. But like, so like to me, any time you put a pond in, regardless of size, you should be applying products right away.
Yeah. That's good for you to know on that too, because having a bigger one. Because I look at like at Ben's pond over there. Yeah, it's just all muck, but it's probably mostly sediment. Yeah. I mean, because I remember like I put the dock out there. We used to own it, and we sold it to one of our friends. But I had a dock out there, but then the water got so high, they flipped the mower. I was walking out there to get that, and it's literally you couldn't walk out there. I mean, you had like waders on. It was like muck up to your knees, like you were going to get stuck. But that's all I'm sure. Sediment that was built by the DNR
runoff from the hills coming in around that.
It was only supposed to be a 50-year lake. Basically, the DNR built it. It said it's 50 years, and then it should silt in 50 years from runoff. And so I don't know if that muck is considered silt or vice versa or not.
All of that included. So like even like when I did stormwaters, you always put like a 15-year timetable on it, and then either you had pretty much it was forcing always like the HOA COA to always completely re-excavate it. So they put those lifespans on to be like, and after that you got a giant bill. That's pretty much what they're.
Well, that's what they're doing right now. They're dredging it because it's only like 12 feet deep, or like, it's 17 acres. It was 17 acres, and now it's silted in some, so it's like 13.
Yeah, so
it's like 12 feet deep so they're dredging a bunch of it out. But I would assume that's. But I'm wondering, like someone like Joel that just put one in, not that big or anything, but if you put that demuck pellets in there every year, would that maybe get rid of that silt?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So they could have prevented that if they're going around that and just doing it. But it's 17 acres. Now that might be too far gone. It's already 7 feet deep of muck in there. I mean, I was walking in there and I was sinking this deep. I was like, I got to get out of here. I'm going to
there's a point where
I'm not going to get out.
Yeah, there's a point where it's too far gone. And the problem is every time it's like 50-acre lake, right, or 20-acre stormwater pond, unfortunately, that's a guy that's sitting behind a desk that doesn't understand growth cycles and all that. We fought engineers all the time. It was of constant frustration. We wanted depth. We wanted steep slopes. We wanted, so it didn't grow, but they didn't factor that. So then a 20-year pond was selling a 10-year pond, and HOA has a $200,000 bill on their hands. Mm-hmm. So, now like with that, I mean, you start adding that, and let's say you have that little muck there. So like, for instance, there was a pond I took care of, and just through taking care of early growth and adding proactive products, that pond was, I think at the time when I left the company, I think it was like probably getting almost 30 years old. And there was only an inch of muck in that pond. And it was a stormwater pond. But just through routine maintenance and taking care of it.
Wow.
Adding the right products.
That's impressive.
So like Luke, I mean, he's got, fisheries people and all this stuff on his pond. Luke Bryan's a friend of ours, and he's got the giant bass. But I couldn't believe how much work it is to get like giant bass. I mean, you think you throw some fish in there? No. It's feeding and testing and shocking them and getting this many out. How many are in here? The numbers have to be right. I mean, to get a giant bass, it's like, oh my gosh. That's not easy.
No. So to catch one in the wild, you're doing really well.
Yep, 100%.
We get that. It ain't easy to grow a giant whitetail either.
It's
a lot of work.
Especially when they're dying. I need my whitetails to get to 7 to be big, but they all die before they're 5. So it's getting pretty tough to get a 200 anymore around here.
The nice thing is this is a tool at least to start getting the ones that died.
Yeah,
to that next level.
You never could prevent it all until, like I said, if the states would just start to say, hey, let's forget about the CWD funding, let's put that into EHD and maybe get to a root cause of this thing where we can kind of rid the state of it once and for all. Like for all that we can do now is we can save some. I mean, we saved a ton of them with the feeding stuff, and you can just see it because neighbors who haven't just lost them like crazy. And we had like none.
Yeah, we've had farms wiped out next to us, and
and now I think the water's another thing. Of course, people say the same thing. I mean, you get some wind, and all those midges from your neighbors can be over here. But if they still can't breed here, and if your deer are living here, I think you're doing everything that you possibly can. And that's why I just think there's a very important, episode to put out there because. It's getting to be more and more people are talking about. The more people are calling me and all kinds of stuff that are just wiping out all their deer that didn't have these problems before, and even like I said that Alberta thing. So now it's all of a sudden it's starting to be a big deal.
Yep.
So I think you got to arm people with these are the things that you should be doing. And if you can get your neighbors to do it and everybody to do it, you can start. You really can save them because we see how many deer that are living that where the neighbors get wiped out. And for me, I got bit last year because it's expensive. Let's face it, not everybody can afford it either. I was spending, $120,000 a year on feed and things, feeding them right from, time the season was over to right up to it started again. So like last year it was so wet and everything, I was like, well, this is good. I can just run I don't have to run all the protein. I don't have to run the feeders like I normally do, because it shouldn't be a bad EHD year. But then all of a sudden we hit to August or September or August when you thought, okay, this is when the rain started, and it just shut off. And I was like, oh no! By that time it's too late. I mean, we pull our feeders out in September, getting ready for October, time to have them out. There just wasn't enough feeding time, and then we got bit by it. We did lose some. I mean, not an exorbitant amount, but my big ones. I mean. Some of my big ones that are, and you still don't know. Some of your other bigger ones I haven't shown up this year yet, and which isn't, once all the crops are up and stuff, most of them live in those cornfields, and so they'll find them eventually. You'll get pictures of them,
Yeah,
but
and they may not
a lot of
always
them
be dead by water either. I mean, most of the time you're going to find them near water, but if it gets bad and quick,
you find them everywhere. But we find a lot of shed bugs dead too, so even they don't make it through the winter,
they shed
and so you don't know. So you think, oh man, I got the sheds, man. The big ones will be back
Then you
again.
find 'em.
Never again. Never to be seen. So. I have a couple that haven't showed up yet, and I hope that they're still alive, but you just don't know because this EHD is not just killing them in, September in velvet like it used to. And I don't know if that's different from the disease or if it's different here because we're keeping them way healthier and they're living longer.
To me, that's a big part of it. I mean, if it's a healthier organism going into a disease, it's like you said, it's no different than us, right? If we're already sick and then we catch something else, we're going to get way sicker than if we went healthy into something, we're going to fight it way more.
Yeah.
So if they already went healthy into it, contracted, they have a better chance of living.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So you just do everything you possibly can, but I think, if you can keep the midges numbers low with with the EHD-Fense and the feeding and everything that we're doing, I think, some of these maybe the few that we are losing, maybe we can keep those. If everybody who, is listening could start doing some of these things, I think we could improve it a lot.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to try to use it, and it's something that everybody can do. It's not like you need a piece of heavy machinery or farm equipment to do it. You just need your hands and.
So I was gonna call Skip and have him come, but I forgot. But I knew someone like Joel, someone's like me, you try to do everything you possibly can, and that he's going to do it and it'll make a difference for sure.
Yep.
All right, well, let's go look at some ponds. How about?
Sounds great.
That's good.